What's up, A to Z Sports Live on a Friday. We're going to have a fun show today, a little different show. 3 people here on the show and a new face for some of you guys as Ryan Roberts is joining the show today. We have a 7-round Titans mock draft we're going to roll through because Ryan just did all 256 picks of a 7-round full NFL mock draft for A to Z Sports.com. And so we're going to spend the whole show today talking about the picks he made for the Tennessee Titans, and we'll talk more about what Ryan's going to be doing with us the rest of this draft season and pitching in here a little bit throughout the next month or so on this morning show, talking some Titans draft as well. But we'll introduce Ryan here in a second. But Sam, we've got picks. You and Ryan are on different sides of things when it comes to the very first pick of the NFL draft, and I'm sure that's going to be the very just beginning of our disagreement throughout the entire show. It's going to be a good one. We will wrap up with Ain't That Good News to wrap up the show. So the first of our 7-round Titans mocks. I do see Jonathan bringing in here the Canada stuff. Look, that was a tough loss by the U.S. last night. And I
want to say it was not Connor Hellebuck's fault. It was not Connor Hellebuck's fault, and I want to go ahead and get ahead of that narrative now.
It's the first time I've watched hockey in February or in general in many years. So props to hockey for getting a lot of the attention in the middle of February. But Sam, before we officially get going, tell the people what they got to do here. We're going to have a fun show on this Friday.
Yeah, we're hope we can get through the show this Friday. I'm getting notifications this morning, Austin, that I am experiencing service potential, no service, potential no internet. The cold, us Xfinity guys out here are we're going through it. So hopefully we get through the show because it is going to be a good show. We're going to talk Titans draft, go over a 7-round mock draft. That's 8 picks for those of you keeping track at home. Ryan's predictions for where the Titans might go in the draft. Get your thoughts in the chat on everything that he has laid out. I'll give some thoughts of my own. We'll have a nice little debate here about which direction is best for the Titans. And basically just, spend some time critiquing and ripping Ryan to shreds. That's what we like to do here as our intro show. So make sure you share the show before we get into it. Hit the share button in the bottom right corner. If you're watching on Facebook, take the YouTube link, send it to a Titans fan, send it to an NFL fan or a group chat that's in your life and get the word out there that A to Z Sports is live. You can repost us as well on the Twitter X timeline. And just let them know. Titans mock draft, talking about it, and leave a like before we kick it off on a Friday morning.
Yep, let's do it officially. Welcome to A to Z Sports here live on a Friday. I'm Austin Stanley, joined by Sam Thalen, one of our Titans reporters for A to Z Sports.com, and Ryan Roberts for the first time to the Nashville Titans audience. Ryan does a lot of stuff for A to Z Sports.com, writing, covering the NFL draft for A to Z Sports Film Room, a lot of video coming out there, and also his great Notre Dame coverage as Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the runner-ups in college football this past year. But we got to get things going officially. We are Nashville's on-demand sports talk network, going live weekday mornings at 8 Central Time, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Links to the show segment by segment on our Twitter X timeline. Hit us up on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. Leave that 5-star Google review as well for A to Z Sports. Got to thank our sponsors. They make it happen for us, and they help out all of you, like Wilson County Hyundai. Need a new ride? WilsonCountyHyundai.com in Lebanon is where to go. The Bone and Joint Institute, boneandjointtn.org, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care. TDOT, trying to keep our roads safe, but also keeping litter off the streets as well at NobodyTrashesTennessee.com. And our friends at Bart Durham Injury Law, where a crash can change your life forever, but help us just a click away at BartDurham.com. So Ryan, officially introduce yourself to the Nashville/Titans audience. You've been with A to Z Sports. We brought you on right before this football season. You had a great season covering the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, but also what you're going to be doing with Joe DeLeon, who officially has the best name of any A to Z Sports employee. But Ryan, you guys over on A to Z Film Room are going to have a heck of a draft season. So welcome to the show. Kind of tell a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, no, I appreciate for being here. I see some people are threatening me already in the chat about who I should take specifically at number 1. So we'll get to there, obviously. But perfect. I'm excited to be able to break this down. And the NFL draft space has been where kind of my roots have been. And for A to Z Sports, kind of breaking that down. If you guys are on YouTube, don't go there now because you're live on the show with us. But afterwards, A to Z Film Room, make sure you type it into the search bar. We've been breaking down scouting reports, mock drafts endlessly. We'll be talking about everything from rumor mill stuff to potential trades, everything and anything during the draft season, Notre Dame football, college football centric, everything A to Z sports. Kind of try to be a jack of all trades a little bit. And hopefully some people like the analysis because you might be seeing me a little bit more here. So we'll see.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So Ryan's located just outside of Philly in South Jersey, and it is officially colder in Nashville where we are than where Ryan is today. Yesterday, it was what? Well, you said 1 degree yesterday morning, but
it's been the most shocking thing in the world. I came in kind of flexing. I'm like, hey, Austin, it's 15 degrees here, man. It's cold. And then he's like, it's 12 degrees where I'm in. I'm like, I don't know how that's possible, but apparently that's a thing today. So yeah, man, but the Arctic blast, we had some snow on the ground this morning. So hopefully things turn around quickly here, because getting the kids to daycare and stuff in the morning with snow on the ground is not the most fun thing in the world.
There we go. So Ryan is asked quickly, Matt, who is your NFL team, right? Because you're a Notre Dame guy, but Who is your NFL team? And the answer is probably going to be the draft, right? Is your NFL team.
I have an allegiance to the NFL, it is to the Los Angeles Rams. Funny enough, it's a really weird story of my dad was born in Florida. My mom was a Rams fan. I chose the Rams because the greatest show on turf, like just to kind of keep it as brief as possible. So I'm a Rams fan technically, but it's draft season, so I am hoping that every team rebuilds their franchise this offseason.
This is Jeff Rubel, who's Sam, you're muted.
3 snaps for Jeff this morning. 3 snaps.
Jeff is
it's always Notre Dame. Always Notre Dame.
Jeff's the resident Ohio State fan and Colts fan who watches this show for whatever reason. We don't really know. But anyway, let's jump into
and I am the national title runner-up NIU Husky fan.
Yes.
Oh no, let's not do that. Please, let's not do that this morning, please.
Okay, now let's get Sam and Ryan going at it, because we have Ryan's 7-round mock draft for the Titans and your overall mock draft for the entire NFL. And we're going to start off with number 1 overall. Ryan, you have the Titans going with quarterback Cam Ward out of Miami. It's been something that's been discussed and will be discussed for the next 2+ months about what the Titans will do. Is it Cam Ward? Is it Shedeur Sanders? Is it quarterback overall in general? Is it Abdul Carter? Do they trade out of the pick with who? How far do they trade back? There's so many different conversations about what the Titans will do. What has been your take up into this point, and why you went with Cam Ward for the Titans at 1 overall on the week of President's Day, mid to late February, where you have Cam Ward pre-combine?
I mean, it's such a guessing game right now, right? I mean, you laid out all the options that they could potentially go. I kind of am I'm in the camp right now of, if Tennessee stays at 1, I think they're going to go quarterback. Like that's just kind of my pulse on it, right? Like I love Abdul Carter, and I would not be opposed to necessarily taking him at number 1, but I really think that Tennessee is eyeing trade back opportunities potentially. But I think if they stay at 1, they're going to take a quarterback. And at that point, it's like, who's your pick, right? Like, is it Cam Ward? Is it Shedeur Sanders? I know we're going to have that conversation here. For me, it's Cam, because of the upside factor he brings, because of the competitive factor he brings. I just don't necessarily think, and we'll get more into Shedeur in a second, but I think if you're picking a quarterback at 1, you're not picking necessarily just for the floor, right? Like, you're picking for what that guy could be from an elevating perspective, because ultimately Tennessee has the number 1 pick for a reason, right? They weren't very good, and you need a guy that could potentially make wide receivers better, could keep the defense off the field a little bit longer, could make things happen when things aren't necessarily there. That out of structure magic, for the lack of a better word, like that's kind of what steers me towards Cam Ward a little bit in this quarterback debates and conversation.
Yeah, I guess what you mentioned at the very end there was like the out of structure magic, which is what we thought Will Levis would have more of, magic. It just ended up blowing up in his face and everybody else's face. So like, I guess, why should Titans fans not have PTSD for a quarterback who plays out of structure after watching what Will Levis just did this past season?
It's a fascinating question, because I think here's the major difference. Cam was actually good in college, right? Like, there's a major difference between him and Will Levis. Will Levis was actually not good in Kentucky. Like, if you look at the production, you look at the game-to-game perspective, Cam Ward was actually productive at multiple stops in college, and then obviously what he did at Miami. Like, I think that it's an apples oranges comparison. I understand why people ask it, because Will Levis is that out of structure merchant, right? Like, he wants to hunt for the big play constantly, and he wants to make some some weird decisions at times and some unhealthy decisions at times, including the mayo stuff. Like that stuff's super weird. Eating that much mayo is just not sustainable for the human body. But for like Cam Ward, I just think, yes, there is going to be some plays that make you want to pull your hair out a little bit, right? Scratch your head. Why are you doing that? But ultimately, every single year, going back to Incarnate Word, where he started his career at, going to Washington State, and then in Miami last year, he got better each and every season. And he was incredibly productive, especially this past year. I just think it's an apples to oranges because Will Levis was all upside. It wasn't production on the field. It wasn't a floor at all. I do think Cam's floor is significantly higher than what Will's was because Will's just he was not a productive quarterback in college.
Yeah, which made him a second-round pick, 33 overall versus number 1 overall. Very different, obviously. So, Sam, we know you're a Shedeur Sanders guy. So when you hear all this Cam Ward, number 1 of the Titans from Ryan, what is your reaction and how do you feel about Cam Ward for the Titans instead of your guy, Shedeur?
I hear exactly what I've been hearing from the NFL draft space for quite some time now, and what I believe is the number one flaw of draft analysis, because we like to compare quarterback play to tools. Tools do not equal upside. Playing out of structure does not equal upside. Patrick Mahomes has diluted our brains and tricked us into believing that you have to be able to play off structure, improvisational football in order to be a productive next level player. Well, we bring up Will Levis and Will Levis's ability to play out of structure and how he potentially had that magic that Titans fans thought they were getting. The other guy who I guess is showing some flashes right now, but I don't think there's this is an apples to apples comparison. How about Bryce Young? The guy who extended the play, the guy who got out of the pocket, the guy who made the magic happen. And it turns out the better quarterback option was the CJ Stroud, the guy who had less of the flashy tools, the guy who didn't use his legs all that often, the guy who didn't have arm strength for days, but he played well within structure. All of the things that are negatives about Cam Ward are the reasons why I don't like Cam Ward, because maybe he makes magic happen every once in a while in structure. He also F's up your structure because he can't play in structure well without turnover-worthy plays. So if you want the argument for Shedeur Sanders, I've got it for you. I'll go lay it out for you. Let's talk turnover-worthy plays. The last 2 seasons of turnover-worthy plays between Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. Shedeur Sanders, 13. Cam Ward, anybody got a guess? 13.
Turnover-worthy plays.
Turnover-worthy plays.
You said
13, 2 years.
I mean, it's definitely like it's
24.
definitely in the 20s. Yeah, I would say mid-20s.
How about 38 turnover-worthy plays for Cam Ward instead of 13? How about actual turnovers? Shedeur Sanders, 23. Cam Ward, 32. Shedeur Sanders has more passing touchdowns. He's got less interceptions. He's got less fumbles. Cam Ward has more than double the fumbles. Shedeur Sanders, the highest completion percentage in the history of college football. And we don't even need to talk about completion percentage because, check downs, whatever. It's not always a sign of accuracy. And that's where we go to the weighted on target percentage, a true sign of how accurate a quarterback is when he passes the ball. Okay. Here is this year's draft class. Shedeur Sanders, 73.26 weighted on target percentage. Jackson Dart, 65.87 weighted on target percentage. Miami Hurricanes quarterback Carson Beck, 61.48%, above Cam Ward, who's down at 61.21. 61.21 is just 2% higher than college Will Levis. It's actually right on par with college Jalen Milroe. That's right, Tennessee Volunteers fans. So if you want to look at last year's draft class and figure out where Shedeur Sanders versus Cam Ward are compared to last year, Caleb Williams was at 69.26. Again, Shedeur Sanders, 73.26, more accurate than Caleb Williams. Jaden Daniels, 76. Drake May, 72, more accurate than Drake May. Michael Penix, 63. J.J. McCarthy, 66. Bo Nix, 70.5. So Shedeur Sanders is higher in weighted on target percentage than everybody from last year's draft class, with the exception of Jaden Daniels. Cam Ward is below all 6 of those guys. So now we talk about the other intangibles, right? What does Cam Ward bring to an organization? You wanted the argument, I'm bringing the argument.
You're going full like final tribal. You're out, your back's against the wall.
I've done this before.
I know this is exactly what that feels like. Yes.
So highest completion percentage in college football history. We talked about all the other stuff, but what are the intangibles? Well, by all accounts, Shedeur Sanders is known to be an exceptional leader, well respected by his teammates. He has that clutch gene, that composed energy that Brian Callahan talks about all the time as setting good quarterbacks apart from great quarterbacks. That nervous system is calm, cool, collected. How many clutch moments did we see from Shedeur Sanders during his time at Colorado? The one knock against Shedeur Sanders, the number one knock, right, is arm strength, which, we've seen guys like Jared Goff not have exceptional arm strength in the past. And, he's been able to overcome that playing within structure with accuracy and sacks, taking sacks. But let's also look at the support system that both Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward had in college. Would like to go over this real quick. Do we know the top running back for the University of Miami from last year?
Well, East and I did this bit the other day. Yeah.
Damian Martinez, 1,002 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns. We also have Fletcher Jr. at 600 yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. So 2 guys alone combined for 1,600 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns. Ryan, draft expert.
Yes.
Who is the leading rusher for the Colorado Buffaloes?
Probably Dallin Hayden. Would be my guess.
It is not. It is a guy named Gustave Augustave that had 380 rushing yards this year.
I think he was committed to Arkansas at one point. So, I mean,
they ran for 340 something carries, 840 yards as a team last year. You talk about a guy who was under pressure. Shedeur Sanders had potentially the worst running game in recent memory of Power 4 football, Power 5 football, whatever you want to say, looking back on it. So less support around him, which leads to a lot of that pressure. I'm not done. Done.
Come on. Okay. Last thing.
Look at Pro Football Focus. Okay. The grades and stats. All right. Let's go down this line. PFF overall grade, big time throw percentage, turnover worthy percentage, adjusted completion percentage, pressure to sack rate, PFF clean pocket grade, PFF under pressure grade. Shedeur Sanders ranks in these categories: 3, 14, 3, 3, 19, 3, 8. Okay. Cam Ward, 1, 4, 32, 12, 21, 1, 10. A lot of variance in Cam Ward's profile. The one area that Shedeur Sanders is not elite is his pressure to sack rate, where he is ranked 19th. That is the big knock on him. And yet Cam Ward, 21st in that same area. So even where Shedeur is weak, Cam Ward is worse. And that, my friends, is why Shedeur Sanders should be the pick at number 1 overall. I expect 7 votes at Tribal Council. Okay. SAM is how you write it down.
You're expecting it's SAM. SAM. That's what we're doing. All right. So, Ryan, I'm going to let you have a rebuttal. Okay. We do got to stay on script here and stay ahead of the chains. So we'll ask this question: who do you side with? I'll put up a YouTube poll, but I do want you guys to wait to hear Ryan's rebuttal to Sam's just vomit of information and data on Shedeur Sanders there. So who do you side with? Are you with Ryan and Cam Ward at number 1, or are you with Sam and Shedeur Sanders at number 1 overall? We'll talk about that here in a second. But first, I want to tell you guys about our great friends at Bart Durham Injury Law. BartDurham.com is their website. If you need them for whatever car accident that you go through in your life, Bart Durham Injury Law is there for you, just like they have been for Nashvilleians and Tennesseans alike for 50 years, because Bart Durham opened the doors to the business in 1975. Unfortunately, the legend that it was Bart Durham passed last April, but his son, Blair Durham, Marine veteran and great Nashvilleian as well, has been running the show and doing a great job with a lot of behind-the-scenes efforts to help out the Nashville community. And it's all about helping you when you're in need. And that's with any big truck wreck, any car accident, whatever you need an attorney for, they've got you covered right there at Bart Durham Injury Law, online at bartdurham.com.
Bart Durham also bringing you next week's coverage of the NFL Combine up in Indianapolis, where we will be to talk to Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Leave a like on the show as well this morning before we get into this next little transition. We look at the rest of the mock draft. We hear Ryan's rebuttal, but leave a like on the show. This is what you come to A to Z Sports for on your Friday morning. So while you're spending your time, go ahead and smash that like button.
That's right. All right. So Ryan Roberts, who's on the show, Ryan's going to be a part of the morning show a little bit throughout the month of March. Sam's got some time off. I've got some time off coming up. So Ryan is a draft expert for A to Z Sports Film Room. He'll be joining us from a little bit here, talking Titans draft throughout the draft season. So Ryan, you went Cam Ward in your big 7-round mock for the entire league. You went Cam Ward number 1 overall. So you just heard all of that from Sam. What is your quick rebuttal on why you went Ward over Shedeur Sanders?
On quick here too,
yeah,
Ryan.
I mean,
we don't need anybody.
You just took up
we don't need anybody hijacking the show.
Like,
we don't.
You literally went like 8 minutes on Shedeur Sanders stats right there. So Ryan, what is your thoughts on everything that Sam said, and overall, what's your thoughts on Shedeur Sanders? Because this is the first time that you've been talking to this audience about these quarterbacks. Do you like Shedeur? Like, is it just like is it splitting hairs? Is it a preference thing?
I like Sanders' floor that he brings to the table, but I do think that there are some things that we are going to just kind of skate over if you are a Sanders truther and just not talk about enough. And these are the faults that ultimately make me hesitant on Sanders, especially that early in the draft. First is, and Sam mentioned already, the arm strength is very NFL average. The athleticism is very NFL average to slightly below NFL average. So if we're talking about raw tools, not great. Also, before the year, he measured in for scouts at 6'1.5" and 198 pounds, right? So he's also a smaller framed guy. So you mentioned Bryce Young, Sam, right? You mentioned Bryce Young, the smaller quarterback who needs to be perfect and needs to evaluate passing windows with getting a little bit out of structure at times. The thing that we kind of miss with Shedeur Sanders, time to throw is right around the same as Cam Ward's. We need to stop acting like Shedeur Sanders is this guy that is 3-step, ball out, 5-step, ball out. He holds onto the ball incredibly long, and against Big 12 defenses, didn't hurt him too bad. And Sam, if we want to have the quick trivia of all the 16 teams that are in the Big 12 right now, I think we could have that conversation, okay? But either way, I just don't think it necessarily translates to the next level, because we're talking about a young man who, yes, he can gain weight, right? But gaining weight for him is what, 205, 210? I mean, we're talking about a kid that's going to be 6'1" and some change, probably 205, with an average arm, with a below average athleticism. It's about how things translate to the next level. And we missed that a little bit in your CJ Stroud, Bryce Young conversation, because Bryce Young did lack some traits that maybe evaluators looked over because of the production. Cam Ward doesn't lack those things. I don't think that he's a comparison to Bryce Young at all. The production might be somewhat similar in a vacuum, but Cam Ward is a verified 6'2". He's over 220 pounds. He has a very strong arm. He's a better athlete than Shedeur Sanders. We could talk about past production.
So let's talk Anthony Richardson then, because there's your freak athlete.
Another guy, though.
Has all the wow magic.
I'll jump in on this. Anthony Richardson wasn't good in college. like just like Will Levis wasn't good in college.
But I have a really hard time with like this consensus idea that like just because this guy has average arm strength, like he is a below average, I wouldn't even say athlete. I'd say he's a below average runner. But Shedeur Sanders can extend the play and he can maneuver in the pocket. His pocket maneuvering is actually pretty well above average.
He's just polished. He's a polished quarterback. Like he knows how to play the position.
But we have a guy who has kind of shown his ability to extend plays and maneuver in the pocket, and he does enough with his legs to extend the plays. He doesn't run, but he relies on his legs. The comp that I made that I think are the 3 most accurate comps to NFL where Shedeur Sanders goes from a tools perspective would be Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, Jared Goff.
Ooh.
Now, all three of those guys are guys that don't have exceptional arm strength, but they're accurate. They're guys that maneuver the pocket very well. Though that is the 1-to-1 for me. And I don't know how, when a guy is so productive in college, we sit here and can say it's not going to translate to the next level. Well, why? Well, because he doesn't have arm strength. Like all of the things that are the arguments for why Cam Ward is going to excel. You said upside. He's competitive. He has tools. He plays out of structure. Are also like, we say that about quarterbacks all the time that don't work. And I think it is a misnomer about the current draft process and the evaluation we do of QBs.
It's fair, but I would say this is that some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL do those things, right? So yes, there have been some that have flamed out and not been good, but there's others. I mean, I don't want to compare anybody to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, but like there are examples of guys that have
and that's why. But that's what it is. It's this. It's the fact that we see the best quarterbacks in the NFL be Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, and these guys that can do things out of structure. It's why we look at Caleb Williams and we say, what a slam dunk prospect, because he does have some of that, can throw from different arm angles, can throw off platform, can do improvisational things.
Right.
But I think that forces us to over-evaluate tools and under-evaluate having it between the ears. I believe Shedeur Sanders has it between the ears more than
I think both of them do. And like in our pre-show call this morning, I like jokingly was like, which is more valuable, Cam Ward's dog level or like Shedeur Sanders like cool level, right? Because like Cam Ward flipped the culture at Miami in a very short period of time of one college offseason to compete for a playoff spot. Didn't get there, just like Shedeur in Colorado with Dion, Prime, all that stuff, in flipping that franchise or that organization's culture in 2 seasons from bottom to legit, right? And so I think both of them have the mentality and what I think between the ears can be the face of the franchise of an NFL team. I feel like it's very split on preference when it comes to, do you want the guy to run your structure, or do you want the guy with a high ceiling who can make a lot of plays and can really elevate your organization, not just for the first 3 years of his career, but beyond? And I think that's where the Titans are at, because if they draft a quarterback, number 1 overall, the clock has started and it's probably going double speed on Brian Callahan. And so that's where I think this whole situation is. If the Titans don't take a quarterback number 1 overall, trade out, draft Carter, whatever it may be, go veteran, I think that extends Callahan's or slows down the clock a little bit. So maybe. I think that's maybe. But again, we don't really know. There's so many variables to this. What Ryan said at the very beginning is like the last time there's been this much uncertainty at number 1 overall with a team that needs a quarterback is when. Like we got to go back over a decade, over 10 drafts to know that difference there.
Well, and I mean, so like, here's my big thing, right? About like this, like these two can kind of neck to neck to one another. It's so fascinating because they're so different, right? They're extremely different. My biggest thing though is the Tennessee Titans are not a great football team right now, right? And I am looking at one quarterback who I think in Cam Ward has, and I know, Sam, you hate the upside conversation, right? But the upside is, though, if he hits, if he's developed well, if the coaching staff's good, if the support's around him, he could develop into one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, the downside to Cam Ward, now full transparency on this, is that he has a peak and a valley that is bigger than Shedeur Sanders. Like his upside to his downside is a lot bigger. But here's my thing about Shedeur is that, and Sam, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. If Shedor's most likely outcome, okay, his most likely outcome for me is that he is a quarterback in the NFL, probably somewhere between quarterback 12 to quarterback 18. Okay. That's what I see, because I do think that those tools are to the degree that it is going to stunt him a little bit in certain instances from an upside conversation. And my question for you, do you want to draft quarterback 12 to 18 at number 1 overall? I don't know if I would. I would rather draft Cam, because although he might be volatile and he might have a little bit of a boomer bust to him, if that boom happens, that's going to save my job. Is Shedeur Sanders being 12 to 18 going to save Brian Callahan a job in a couple years? I'm not so sure about that, man, because I don't know if that necessarily elevates things around him potentially.
To me, I don't view quarterback prospects now. Like when guys come out, I don't believe like, oh, he's going to be in the 12 to 18 range, because I think there's a lot of variance there based on fit, based on your scheme, right? Like the same way that we can look at Jared Goff in LA and say that he's probably quarterback 16, quarterback 17, right? He's a top 10 quarterback with the Lions because of how Ben Johnson uses him and the offensive line that they build around him and the structure that surrounds him. But what Jared Goff has is the ability to excel within structure. It's what Jalen Hurts has. Jalen Hurts doesn't have all of these tools, at least as a passer, that we look for in a quarterback now. But he can win and he can be a Super Bowl MVP because he excels within structure. And what I think Shedeur Sanders does very well is excel within the structure. He's not going to tank your structure. He's not going to make the bad plays. He's going to execute the offense as it's supposed to be run. He's going to make the post-snap reads. And so I think what Shedeur Sanders' ceiling is pretty relative to the offense that you put him in. Because I think if tomorrow he's the quarterback of the Detroit Lions, he probably plays like a top 10 QB as a rookie. Can the Titans do that? I don't know, right? And I think that's more on Brian Callahan, and that burden is on him than it is Shedeur Sanders. But I do know that you have the opportunity to go and get a guy that has proven it at the college level and can execute what you ask him to do in your offense. And I think that is worthy of the number 1 overall pick, because so often you see teams take a swing and they miss.
All right, so let's stay moving forward. I did put up a YouTube poll here on who do you side with, Ryan taking Cam Ward for the Titans or Sam taking Shedeur Sanders. This is current. Ryan, Cam Ward, 51%. Sam Shedeur Sanders, 49%. So we've almost accomplished nothing because it was 50-50 before, like now it's 52-48 Cam Ward. It was 50-50.
Then.
And I am a tiebreaker. And I will tell you, my vote went for Cam Ward. And I waited to vote until like 2 minutes ago. And what made me actually pull the trigger on Cam Ward was the idea of you're picking number 1 overall as a quarterback. You can't pick a middle of the road quarterback at 1 overall. I like that thought process.
He's not a middle of the road quarterback.
Overall, if this was an open-ended question on what would Austin Stanley do if he was with Mike Morganzi in the draft room, I would go Abdul Carter. I'm just saying but if I'm picking a quarterback and you're telling me right now you're at 1, you have to go quarterback, I would go Cam Ward over Shedeur. I'm not anti-Shedeur at 1 either. I just think if you're tie breaking me, I'm going to go Cam Ward.
I have another thing.
We got to.
No, it's not a you thing. It's not like a whatever thing. But
it's not you. It's me.
I do want to make this point. Okay, and we don't have to talk about it.
Okay.
But it is relevant.
Okay.
I think, and I've talked to people about this extensively. I'm not throwing Ryan in this bucket. I'm not throwing anybody in this bucket. Okay. I'm not throwing Austin in this bucket. I think the NFL world doesn't know what to do with a black quarterback pocket passer. I think that is why Shedeur Sanders can be polarizing to people. I think we sit here and we are like, you need to be Lamar Jackson. You need to be this athletic freak. And it turns out he's not. He's just a really good pocket passing quarterback. And I think people aren't ready to have that conversation, but I do think it is a factor when talking about Shedeur Sanders right now. And I hope he proves people wrong.
I think there is something to that overall. All right. So Ryan's got other picks. We've got 7 more picks for the Titans. We've got 35th, 102, 119 and beyond. So we're going to get to this. The Titans go with the 35th pick overall. We'll discuss that in a second from what Ryan Roberts did on A2Zsports.com. But first, I want to tell you guys about the Bone and Joint Institute. If you get hurt in life, you have to know where to turn. The Bone and Joint Institute in Franklin, Tennessee is your one-stop shop for any type of injury life throws at you. Just like in football, injuries happen in life. Happens with me. Whether you're working out, Sam, you're a little sore today. You're talking about that. Worked out with a trainer yesterday. If you pulled something, then the Bone and Joint Institute can help you out with how to rehab that injury. If you need surgery, they've got the best experts, the best resources and surgery center in Franklin, Tennessee, right off of I-65 and Highway 96, next door to Williamson Medical Center, online, boneandjointtn.org.
Share the show this morning. Maybe share the show. Tell people to go back, watch the debate. If you know somebody in your life that's like, I don't know what the Titans should do at quarterback. Well, go listen to the argument. Go listen to the points from both sides for Cam Ward, for Shedeur Sanders. Send the show. Just got to share it. Let them know that we're live. And we got more picks coming your way, breaking down a 7-round mock draft. So share the show here on a Friday morning.
Donald says, Sam, you just described Teddy Bridgewater.
That's my comp. That's literally my comp for Shedeur Sanders. Go to A2Z Sports, Google quarterback comps for 2025. That's literally my comp is Teddy Bridgewater. Yeah.
All right. The pick 35. Ryan, you go the Titans offensive tackle from Ohio State, Donovan Jackson, the 35th pick overall, 3rd pick in the 2nd round. Tell us why the Titans go with Donovan Jackson from the reigning college football playoff champions, Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously right tackle is a massive need for Tennessee Titans. Surprise, surprise, the Nicholas Petit-Frere pick did not work out. I could have told you that coming out of Ohio State, but who am I to know anything, right? But I Donovan Jackson is such a unique player because the majority of his career has been starting at offensive guard. But then the second half of the 2024 season, when Josh Simmons, who has a chance to go in the first round as well at left tackle out of Ohio State, got injured, they decide to slide. Well, they decided to go with a backup at first. He got hurt, or he was playing bad. I forget what the background was there. But eventually, Donovan Jackson sliding over to left tackle was the conversation point for Ohio State. And he had a couple rough plays against Abdul Carter. Was literally his first career start. Was like, hey, here guys, here, take on Abdul Carter. Sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. So he had a couple rough spots, but then down the stretch, I mean, I think they had him at like no pressures let up during the playoff stretch, especially for Ohio State. And that's against guys like Tennessee with James Pierce Jr. That's against Texas with Baron Sorrell and a couple other decent edge players. It's against Notre Dame with RJ Oben, who was just at the Senior Bowl as well. So like he saw some NFL rushers down the stretch, and he was tremendous at left tackle. So I think there's some questions still going to be about left guard, left tackle, or left guard, offensive tackle, just in general. I think he could play tackle in the NFL because I think he has the necessarily foot quickness. He has good technique from a kick slide perspective, and he's got 34 plus inch arms. So we're not talking about like a short armed guy who can't last on an island. Mm-hmm. I think it would be interesting. And in this hypothetical, if Tennessee does draft him at pick 35, and he might end up going a little bit earlier, we'll see. But if they do draft him at 35, it's with the intention to play him a tackle. And at worst, the nice floor is if he's not a tackle, then he's a starting caliber offensive guard. So I think that just helps your offensive line in general and finds a quick need early on for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, and the Titans have a need at right guard and right tackle. And
yeah, I mean, I think free agency is a big factor here, right? Like, what do they do in free agency for the Titans? As the roster sits currently, a guy like Donovan Jackson makes sense because if he's a right guard, he's a right guard, and you need one of those two. So, like, I mean, maybe if you sign Trey Smith, then you're a little bit more pigeonholed into like what you actually need to add to the offensive line. So we'll see what kind of financial commitment they decide to make there in free agency. But I think anybody, I have had a couple guys that I've had my eye on right at that second round pick that are maybe guard, maybe tackle, and maybe it doesn't matter either way as long as you're adding a quality starter.
Yeah, somebody saw in the comments when it was Donovan Jackson said, no, what about Jack Sawyer? Wrong Buckeye. Because the Titans have a desperate needed edge rusher. And if you're going quarterback number 1 overall, I get you want to help the quarterback at number 1 with a right tackle potentially, but it was Jack Sawyer on the board still at 35 overall. What's your thoughts on that option? Because that's kind of a fan favorite because of what he did in the playoff too.
I just don't love Jack Sawyer as a prospect, to be honest. I think he was a great college football player and he was vital for the Buckeyes down the stretch. I just think at that spot 35, I'm still looking for a little bit more juice as a pass rusher. And I think that's where he lacks a little bit. He's kind of if I don't win with my first step and power, I'm not going to necessarily win. He's a little bit stiff as a rusher. For me, he's a solid player who might be a 5 to 6 sack a year guy who's a really good run defender. That's a quality part of your team. But at pick 35, it's just a little too rich for a player that I think has a little bit of a lower ceiling in terms of a true pass rush on the NFL level.
Yeah, I don't know if Sawyer is the just to go along with that. Like, I don't know if he fits into the bucket of what the Titans are lacking at edge. I feel like, they've been able to bring in players that are productive edge players in the past, but what they really lack is that guy who wins consistently as a pass rusher and therefore elevates the rest of the defensive front around him. And I agree that Sawyer can be a very productive player, particularly against the run, but I don't know if he gives you that dominant edge presence that you're looking for this defense right now. Not to say he's not worthy of a pick, but if that's the one addition you're making at edge this offseason, I don't know if it gives Denard Wilson that upper hand he's looking for.
Yeah, good deal there. All right, so we've got the day 1 and day 2 picks out of the way. Cam Ward, Donovan Jackson, 1 and 35. Let's roll through these day 3 picks. So we'll go pick by pick. Ryan will do a quick blurb on your thoughts on the player and the fit for the Titans. Pick 102, atop the 4th round, Quincy Riley, cornerback out of Louisville. They've got Jarvis Brownlee Jr., who played at Louisville previously as a rookie last year. The 5th round was a good player. Quincy Riley, cornerback Louisville, 102. What are your thoughts, Ryan?
I mean, he's a really scrappy, tough, competitive corner that can run as well. So I think there's some projection for him to play outside or inside on the next level. And I think that versatility is kind of what we talked about with the Donovan Jackson, right? When you have ability to play a couple different spots, I think it's less of a risk to potentially find a starter on the next level. So I think Riley, whether it is as an outside zone heavy corner or a guy that could play in the nickel, I think he just adds a lot to his secondary potentially.
I think if the Titans are going corner this early, they probably don't like the long-term ability for, like, I think Cheeto Awuzie to be a player, or they might not re-sign Roger McCreary after his rookie deal that he's entering year 4 in this upcoming season. Okay, pick 119, another 4th-round pick. This was the pick the Titans got for trading away. I just lost Ernest Jones, the linebacker to the Seattle Seahawks. So Caden Prather, wide receiver, Maryland at 119. Who is Caden Prather as a wideout?
I mean, I like him a lot. I think he's one of the big sleepers in this wide receiver class. He had to share the ball with Tate Felton, who's another really good wide receiver come out of Maryland. But this kid is a 6'3", 210-plus pound wide receiver. I expect to run in the high 4.4s. He's got route running chops too. Like, he's not really a stiff vertical guy either. I think he can run routes. So he's a little bit of a developmental guy in the 4th round in terms of just kind of upside and ceiling. But I do think he brings a decent floor as well because he is a pretty good route runner for his size. So at that point, height, weight, speed dude who has had some production and is trending upwards still, I think he brings a lot of value as an outside receiver.
All right, a couple 5th-round picks here. Now, here's the edge player. Another, like, picked the teammate Jalen Harrell last year in the 7th round, edge out of Michigan. Now, Josiah Stewart, edge out of Michigan at 143, the first of the Titans picks in the 5th round. What do you think about Stewart?
I mean, he's probably more of a designated pass rusher, especially early on in his career. He's a little bit sawed off. He's not the tallest rusher of all time. He's not the longest rusher just in general, but this kid plays with great leverage and he's incredibly powerful. And he was very productive both at Coastal Carolina and at Michigan this past year. So I think he helps your pass rush immediately, even at pick 143. You're not looking at an every down player, especially early on in his career. But if you want a guy that can come in there on 3rd downs and obvious pass situations and help, I think that's what Stewart can bring.
All right. The 2nd pick. This is the DeAndre Hopkins pick. Linebacker. I'm gonna let you. Is it Yamon? Is it Yaman?
Yep.
Dumas Johnson out of Kentucky.
Yamon.
I mean, why not? It could be
Yamon. You went to Yamon as your first guess.
I was being a little bit facetious with that. I was doing a little much, but. Who is Johnson out of Kentucky?
I like JDJ is a good call.
JDJ is the correct move, but yeah. I like Yamon.
You gotta like the hyphen.
I mean, I could have gone Jamaican, but I went more like French.
Jamon Dumas Johnson. He started his career at Georgia and ended up this last year at Kentucky. He is just a really physical inside backer. I think he's a true Mike on the next level, but he has pretty good straight line speed as well. Not the most flexible dude of all time. So, like, if you're asking him to be a asset in pass coverage, that's not necessarily his thing, but as a guy that can potentially back up Mike and play special teams at that point in the draft, I think he brings a lot of experience and a lot of production.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Daniels. Just go to a tapas place, Sam, and get cultured a little bit about
jamon. Ham in Spanish.
Yeah. All right, now into the late round picks, 180. Another Louisville player, Ja'Cory Brooks, wide receiver out of Louisville. I remember watching this guy play a good bit, especially against Miami when I was watching some Cam Ward too. So tell us about Brooks.
He started his career at Alabama, obviously ended here at Louisville. He just had his most productive year and really started fulfilling that 5-star upside he had coming out as a recruit. He is one of the best ball trackers in this class. I wouldn't necessarily call him explosive down the field, but he has a good frame. He's got a pretty long catch radius, and he does a really good job with adjusting his body on the outside, down the sideline, and be able to make some really nice contested catches. So a guy that might be a little bit one note as a receiver, like a true outside receiver who's going to win with his length and catch radius outside. But I think the ball adjustment brings a solid floor to be at least a rosterable wide receiver on the next level.
All right, last pick.
It's a 6th round pick. Like, yeah. Like people in the chat saying, "Nah, Brooks isn't good." It's a 6th round pick, right? Like,
is he better than Jaquan Jackson?
I mean, he's different. Jaquan was his big sell point was like space dude who could return punts, right? Like that was Jaquan.
Brentwood High Austin Stanley might be better than Jaquan Jackson.
I would not drop punts. I know that for a fact. That is
okay.
one thing that I know for a fact.
You've got the endorsement of our guy Teron Davenport with Ja'Cory Brooks. So there you go.
There you go. I just spoiled the last pick for the Titans. Tonka Hemingway.
I saw this. I've never heard of this guy. This is a top 5 name in the draft.
It's great.
This is an unbelievable name.
It is a great name. And look, South Carolina had unbelievable defense, especially up front last year. And I'm curious of like what Hemingway's role in that defense was, because they got some dudes up there in Columbia.
I mean, he was really overshadowed because he had to play inside with TJ Sanders and he had to play with Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart, right? So it's like we're talking about like Sanders is going to go top 64 probably. Dylan Stewart's probably going to be a top 10 pick when he's eligible. Kyle Kennard's probably going to go day 2 as well this draft. So he was overshadowed, and he's a little bit of like an undersized interior player. He's only about 6'2", 280 something pounds, but he's got a pretty good first step and he's pretty flexible, man. So I think as an interior pass rusher that late in the draft, he might not give you a ton on early downs, but that is valuable because when you talk about quarterback play, quarterbacks hate pressure in their face. And I think Tonka Hemingway has that potential to eventually be a part of a rotation.
I love it. You simply cannot be a defensive lineman named Tonka and not be an absolute beast. Like that guy's going to be insane.
I mean, you would expect a guy named Tonka to maybe be like a run stopping interior defensive lineman, right?
Yeah. I feel like Pierre Tart's name is actually Tonka, but we should also I just kind of anticipate. I want to see like a thick 6 out of Tonka. I want to see like a Tonka pick, and these guys.
Tonka, did you guys have Tonka trucks growing up?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The jokes write themselves.
So Daniel says he is Ernest Hemingway's grandnephew. So while that's a funny joke, South Carolina actually had a relative of Gladys Knight, who is also a draft prospect. Did you know this, Ryan?
Oh, Demetrius Knight is related to
Demetrius Knight is a relative of Gladys Knight. So
I had no idea.
How about that? How about
Gladys Knight was on The Masked Singer.
Man.
Yeah, I know. And now her grandson.
I wish I would have known that because Demetrius Knight's one of my favorite overall players in this class. So I had no idea that he was related to Gladys Knight. That is insane.
Yes. Insane. So how about
why is that insane? Like
I've never heard it, man. Like you would think that
in the draft is like the son of like an A-list celebrity. I mean,
but here's the thing: Demetrius has this really cool backstory because he was a quarterback at Georgia Tech. Then he had to go to Charlotte to transition to linebacker, and he was literally like a Uber driver or something after Georgia Tech or something, or like a Grubhub driver, and he didn't think he was going to play football again. So like you've heard like this really interesting backstory of him.
Yeah, that's cool.
And you would think that they would also throw in like, hey. It's related to Gladys Knight. Like,
yeah. So there's a Hemingway and a Knight. Only one of them is related to a very famous person. All right. So let's recap this whole thing because we want to get you guys involved overall. The question we're going to ask you in the chat is, what do you disagree with most? So we're going to go negative on it for Ryan's first show. What do you disagree with most about Ryan's 7-round Titans mock draft? I'll go through the picks. Again, at the top, Cam Ward, number 1. We spent 30 minutes on that one. If you want to go back and watch that between Ryan and Sam going Cam versus Shedeur. 35 overall, Donovan Jackson, tackle out of Ohio State. Pick there to be the starting right tackle. If you're going to spend a 35th overall pick on him, that's what you're hoping for. Quincy Riley, cornerback out of Kentucky, top of the 4th round. Then continuing on day 3, Caden Prather, wide receiver, Maryland. Josiah Stewart, edge from Michigan in the 5th round. Then JDJ, linebacker out of Kentucky, 180. Wide receiver Ja'Cory Brooks out of Louisville. And then Tonka Hemingway, defensive tackle out of South Carolina. Those are the 8 selections that Ryan made in his full NFL mock drafts, all 7 rounds overall there. So what do you disagree with most? What do you disagree with most on Ryan's mock draft here? We'll get to all those here in a second, but do want to tell you guys about T-Dot and what T-Dot's been doing. It is a challenging week in the Middle Tennessee and Tennessee area with all the snow, and T-Dot is out there trying to make sure our highways, our interstates across the state are safe for our travel. They have been. We got some snow. It's been frigid cold, had a bunch of ice as well once the snow melts during the day, and T-Dot is doing a great job of keeping our state maneuverable throughout the last few days, but they also do a great job of cleaning up the litter on the side. And their campaign is nobodytrashestennessee.com. Find out how you can get involved, how you can get your kids involved for some volunteer experience. We all can be better and change some bad habits by cleaning up our state, keeping it beautiful at nobodytrashestennessee.com.
Go ahead, leave a 5-star Google review. A big way to help us out. The honorary Lou Man part of the show, where we go ahead to Google. We leave a 5-star Google review because we're nice people that like A to Z Sports, and it's a good way to help out A to Z Sports on a Friday morning. So whether you can do that during the show, after the show, whatever you want to do, go do that for us. We'd appreciate it.
All right. So what do you disagree with most from Ryan's mock? Esco, I'll start off with Esco. He says not enough line help or trade. So Ryan, what is your philosophy on trades and mocks? Because it's February 21st. You did this mock draft yesterday. Like, you're not going to do a bunch of trades yet, right?
I'm not. So this mock, and I even put it in like my little blurb before I even started the mock. After the combine, after free agency, we'll start talking about trades, right? Because we'll have further intel and we'll know all the draft needs that each one of these teams have. So right now, this was firmly this was not a predictive mock either. This is what I would potentially do today if the draft were today, knowing the draft needs I have, and all of this will eventually change into the future. But yeah, no trades yet, man. I don't even like. What if Tennessee just gets a quarterback and then they're more in like the day 2 quarterback developmental conversation? Like, things can change so quickly over the next few weeks.
I hate projecting trades in mock drafts, I suppose, especially when it's not the point of this, right? Like, if you're doing a mock draft of the first round, right? Maybe you want it to be super accurate as to what you think is going to happen, and you have the Titans trading back in this scenario. That I can understand. The purpose of a 7-round Titans mock is not to be super predictive as to what is going to happen. I think it's to illustrate and highlight the needs that the team has and how they could look to address them throughout the course of the draft. Now, I think it's kind of pointless for Ryan to be like, well, I'm trading back from 1 to 7 and I'm getting pick 38. Like, that's so subjective. We don't know what the return would be. We don't know if they would get that. Like, I don't know how productive that is. So I think it is probably a good call to not have trades included in this.
For sure. All right. So let's go to some disagreements here. Sam, I'll send you the chat too. I'm going to start off with Caps. So he disagrees with corner that early. And I think that would be mine as well. I think the corner at the top of the 4th round is interesting because I don't know where that guy plays day 1. And the Titans have so many needs. Where is it an edge guy there? But again, who knows how the board falls? And I don't know how your board fell overall there. But I think that's probably going to be the most popular disagreement overall is the 3rd pick the Titans have, which is the 1st and the 4th round being a corner.
Yeah, Rhino's on that train as well. Sorry, Ryan. Go ahead, and if you want to justify that.
No, I was just going to say that the offensive tackle class not being great this year threw off the entirety of my thought process, because at 35, I was like, need to figure out right tackle in some way. So I passed on a couple edges at that point. And then when I got to the 3rd round, I'm like, Quincy Riley's just a better player than any edge rusher that's on the board right now. So it kind of messed up my entire thought process, the fact that it's not a great offensive tackle.
But that's how it goes. And if that's the situation, then I'm not going to hate on the Titans for saying, well, you know what? We don't want to force, have a overdraft somebody because we have a need. Draft a good player, because you never can have enough corners. Corners get hurt. The Titans know that. They just saw that. Corners get hurt and you need more of them. So,
yeah. Yuri said no wide receiver in round 4. Vanessa thinks the 2nd pick needs to be a wide receiver. Mark disagreed with all the day 2 picks,
which is just one pick. I mean, all of the one pick.
Only one pick. Yeah. Yeah. David said desperately need to trade back at 1. Ryan, you kind of made it sound like you do believe that's a real possibility for the Titans. I think we would all agree it's something they're exploring at this point in time, but not part of the exercise. Waiting until the 4th to get a wide receiver was Brad's biggest issue with it. I guess, what is the reason for waiting on wide receiver? Because I've been seeing a lot of that. People wanted a receiver earlier. So you talked a little bit about edge, but were you in the same boat at receiver when you came around to the Quincy Riley pick?
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved edge, wide receiver were 2 positions that I definitely wanted to fulfill somewhere in this draft earlier than that. It's just just the board did not fall the way I would have wanted it to at either spot. And again, like free agency is a thing, right? I don't know what Tennessee is ultimately going to do in free agency, but I mean, we could be having the same conversation in a couple weeks and being like, well, wide receivers more of a day 3 need at this point.
Because like I think if you think you're gonna go quarterback at the top, then signing a couple of veteran receivers that know what the hell to do might help that quarterback out more than.
I mean, I think they're very likely to make a play at some sort of veteran in free agency. Maybe that's not what Titans fans want to hear or see necessarily. They might not want to, come away and feel like they didn't like they want the upside of a rookie, right? Like that's what we all want. But, we talked a little bit on the show earlier this week, Austin, maybe it's, they go out and they sign Deontay Johnson to a 1-year deal, and they go out and they sign, I don't know, Matt
There's
Collins
just a lot of gross receivers,
But like there are some NFL starter receivers. Like you can get Matt Collins on a cheap contract, and is he a 2? He's a slightly below average number 2 receiver, but he's an NFL receiver. And so now you have Calvin Ridley and Matt Collins, and it's not as depleted
in NWI. Like
right
I think,
now.
So if you get like Calvin Ridley, Matt Collins and NWI, you can live with that. You might have a lower end wide receiver 1 and 2 wide receivers 3s, but
it's one of the worst rooms, but it's at least it's a competent room. It's not Bryce Oliver and Traylon Burks.
Yeah.
So can I tell you one spot that I did think about? Sorry to interrupt, Sam. Is that
no? Go ahead.
I did think about at that 3rd round slot because people were literally talking about it in the chat, and it was on the top of my mind. Elijah Arroyo, who is a tight end out of Miami, was on the board. And I did think about him, to be full transparent. I did, because obviously he has a connection with Cam Ward. I know that, just pass catchers in general, I think need to improve at Tennessee. It's not just wide receivers. Like you need to get more impact at tight end as well overall. So that was a position that maybe I would have thought about again. Like if I went back and did maybe I'll redraft myself for my mock that came out yesterday. I'll just do a full redraft.
I mean, so I know people are saying that's an awful wide receiver room, but I think we were just shooting low end too in the free agency pool. Like I don't think it's crazy. I brought up this name the other day. I mean, they could sign Keenan Allen to it, a 2-year, $20 million contract. And Keenan Allen certainly has his limitations at this stage in his career, but he's a solid NFL receiver still at this point. And I think, especially if you make him more of a focus and he's able to stay healthy. Now, what if your wide receiver room is Keenan Allen and Calvin Ridley and Nick Westbrook at Keenan? I don't think that's horrible. I think that can absolutely be. So I do have a question.
The point is you have 2 picks, 1 and 35, and then you have 102. It's going to be really difficult. You have so many needs. You need a quarterback. You need an offensive lineman. You need an edge rusher. You need a wide receiver. You can only get 2 of those as of right now. And so you're going to miss out on some younger, higher end talent.
One question for Ryan here. I guess, what pick is this overall that we're looking at here? It's their 4th round pick. It's right at the front of the 4th. So 102 is what we're looking at.
Yeah. I believe that's the number 1 pick, the first pick on day 3, right?
It is. Yeah.
It's right at day 3. Ryan, who are the prospects, I guess, in that range that could be there at 102 that you like? I have a few guys in mind that I was watching, very closely at the Senior Bowl. I don't know if a guy like Jaden Higgins gets there. I don't know if Jalen Royals gets there. Jalen Noel, I find really interesting that could be there at 102 as like a very talented slot receiver option. So who are the prospects that stand out to you as potential realistic 102 options for Tennessee? Because I'll just say now, I don't think they address a receiver at 1 or at 35. So unless there's a trade back at some point,
I like Noel a lot. He's a little bit of a smaller slot, 5'9" and 6'8", I think he was, and 196 pounds. He's a true slot, but he's good after the catch. Pretty good route runner as well. I'll tell you another guy that was at the Senior Bowl that I liked, Sam, was Tate Felton out of Maryland, who was Prather's teammate that I took a little bit later in the draft. He's going to run like 4.37 probably at the combine is what I would predict. He's a real downfield explosive dude, can uncover deep. So if we're talking wide receivers at that point, edge is like a very interesting one. It might be slightly high for some people on like a David Walker out of Central Arkansas, but I love David Walker, man. He was down at the Senior Bowl as well. He's a little bit of a kind of like similar to what I said about Josiah Stewart. He's a little bit of a sawed off dude as a pass rusher, but he's explosive. He's powerful. That's a really interesting one. If we're waiting on offensive tackle, and I didn't take offensive tackle at 35, if you just wanted a free agent guy and then a developmental guy, Chase Lunt out of UConn is a kid that I think is super interesting at like 102. He's kind of a taller, athletic offensive tackle who still needs to get more powerful, but has developmental upside. Like that's what we're looking for at that spot potentially.
Yeah. My big thing, which you already addressed, but my thing was going to be, I don't see the Titans waiting all the way until 143 to grab an edge rusher. I feel like that's such a prominent need for them that they know is a prominent need. That's something that I don't think they'll be able to play in the free agent pool too much. Just because those guys, like the guys that are actually valuable are more expensive than I think the Titans are wanting to go in free agency this year. But that is the qualm, right? It's the issue with their situation right now and not having picks, which, gives some credence to the trade down argument. Austin, you talk about wide receiver we bring up, edge rusher we bring up, offensive tackle we bring up. And so if you're using the first overall pick on a quarterback, you're not going to be able to address all of those needs.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's get into some super chats because we got a handful of them from a very busy show. First off, Rhino says, more Ryan shows, please and thank you. So, all right, good. Your great. First one, it was very interesting at the top of things, but overall, at least one guy who might share your name. Rhino is usually a Ryan nickname. I don't know, maybe, great nickname. All right, so, and you'll be on the show Tuesday with me. So Sam and Easton will be at the NFL Combine. Ryan will join them at the Combine on Wednesday. But Sam and Easton will be talking to Borgonzi and Brian Callahan during the show. So Ryan and I will talk more Titans draft on Tuesday. So more Ryan shows are just around the corner. Jay Uso says, we can open up the playbook more with Cam. Shador will get hurt on QB design runs, LOL. He can barely take hits. Well, I don't think that you'll be doing quarterback design runs with
I would say that that's on you. That one's on you as a play caller if you're doing read options with Shador Sanders. And
talk about speeding up Brian Callahan's job security clock is doing that design runs with Shador Sanders.
If Joe Burrow got smoked on like a QB designed run and got injured, people would be like, well, why'd you run that?
That was dumb.
Could have thrown the ball.
All right. Kane says, Sam on BS, take away bubble screens and checkdowns. Who had the better 15+ yard percentage? Also, who leads the most comebacks? Cam is the correct pick.
Bubble screens and checkdowns do contribute to that completion percentage that I brought up. But, I think that weighted accuracy percentage is another indicator of a guy who's pretty efficient as a passer. And I think maybe the best trait, arguably, of Shador Sanders is his intermediate accuracy on some of those like 15 to 20 yard passes and 10 to 15 yard passes, if you consider that intermediate. Fair. Cam Moore did lead the most comebacks, but.
Well, you have to be down in a game to come back. And, I'm not, does Cam Moore get credit for having to come back in a miraculous way at Cal at 1 a.m.? I was up watching that game, by the way.
Yeah.
It was electric, but it was a lot of weird stuff happened for the electricity to start.
To be fair, Shador has had the same thing, and I do think that's a fair argument. Like, people love freaking out about his Hail Mary situation, which awesome play by Shador Sanders. Probably shouldn't have needed a Hail Mary against Colorado State. So or whoever it was against. I don't even, was that?
I mean, that's always the fun thing about comebacks just in general, right? It's you had to be down in order to come back, right? I mean, it always is. There was a piece yesterday where someone was talking about Garrett Nussmeier from LSU as the best returning quarterback in college football. And he was talking about we saw him win a game with his arm against Ole Miss. And I'm like, guys, he went 22 of 51 and threw 2 interceptions. There was a reason that he had to come back against Ole Miss. So that's always a little bit of a
sometimes flaunting comeback wins or how many times do I knock something off the cabinet and then catch it before it hits the ground? Oh, look at that. Look how athletic I was, but I made the fumble in the first place to have to do that. So anyway, all right. Let's see. Jay Uso says Shador couldn't even beat BYU.
Fact.
I mean,
he did lose to BYU.
A lot of
decent football team, though.
BYU, a lot of teams lost to BYU.
They won 10 or 11 games. They were a good team this year. Yeah.
They lost to BYU, but BYU was ranked in the top 15 for most of the year. So,
yes. And then Jay Uso responding to Sam's comment, don't put race into it, Sam. We know what he can do. There's more to it. I think your whole point is
that's okay.
That's okay. And
I figured it was gonna rub people the wrong way. That's okay.
Of course it did. And then Zachary Smith.
You can't handle the truth, brother. You can't handle the truth.
Zachary Smith, bigger super chat here. So shout out to that. I just don't believe I don't believe in our quarterback. You can't teach basic instincts. Just draft Ward and run with it. We're acting like our quarterback is the future. I don't know if he's about Levis, who our quarterback is, because we're not acting like that. I don't think anybody's been acting like that for a while.
Yeah, this is interesting. I agree with the premise in general. Like it, and I think this is probably what skews me towards Shedeur Sanders. Like I said, like I agree that you can't teach basic instincts. And I think I think Shedeur has those instincts, and Cam could have those instincts, but I'm certainly less sure of it. When you get, obviously, the perfect marriage is a guy who's got it between the ears and is composed and has great instincts, and he's also an athletic freak that makes special plays all the times. And that's when you produce a top 5 quarterback in the league and one of the game's very best, right? And that's what we see with an Allen, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, right? And that's obviously what you're shooting for, and that's a perfect world. And so I do think it kind of weighs, whether or not what you value. Do you want to take a big swing and hope that he has those things, or do you want to take a guy who you feel more confident has those things and then try to build the structure around him to make his lack of physical tools less problematic?
Yeah, I think like being a quarterback takes such a different, unique set of like human being skills and instincts than most positions in sports.
It's why it's a tough position. It's the toughest position to evaluate and actually get right, because you can watch a guy who has everything, right? And we saw moments this year want to talk about our quarterback, right? We saw moments this year out of Will Levis that it was just like, this guy can do it, man. Like he is a real good quarterback. Physically, and sometimes mentally, but it was too inconsistent up here. And it was just like, as much as you would see physically at times and you would see a good game or two here, he would revert back because there were issues with getting it. And that's the thing that is difficult to quantify. That nervous system that Brian Callahan talks about a dude who's not going to get rattled, is a hard thing to test for at this stage in the process.
Yep. Ryan, you got anything to add?
No, I would just say you also, sometimes the public isn't privy to information on certain players as well, right?
True.
And because we always talk about, Cam Ward competitiveness, and I think he is a big competitive person, but there's also a little bit of a controversial conversation around Shedeur, because people think that he is just kind of like a media darling and he is a negative character. And from when I talk to people in the NFL, he is one of the highest character reports of players coming out recently at the quarterback position. So he might rub some people the wrong way because it's glitz and glamour. And
I think
it's his dad. It's his
dad. People don't like his dad, who is not a media darling and does rub people the wrong way. And I think, that's obviously projected onto Shedeur a little bit, fair or not, but we kind of knew that coming in, and not going to go away, during his NFL career.
No, it's a little bit different. It's like the Ball brothers, right? Like the kids weren't that crazy. Like LeVar was the problem.
Yeah. Well, especially early, right? Like
early.
Lonzo is the most reserved, quiet dude of them all. He is the one guy that is like not a problem. But I remember when Lonzo was at UCLA and stuff, and he was just at the center of controversy 24/7 because of the spotlight that his dad brought. So
it kind of worked, I guess. Jay Uso says Shedeur couldn't even win the ship at J State. I mean, like, come on, like we're not like whatever.
It's great analysis.
Sweet, thanks. All right, let's go ahead and wrap.
Cam Ward also did, like, if we're talking wins, did not win with a very talented Miami team and was like, I think under 500 at Washington State multiple years. So
don't get me started about my Miami to the college football playoff futures bet that I thought was just banked the entire season until
if they would have got in, they would have won the whole thing though. So
damn committee. All right, let's wrap up this Friday show with some good news. If you have some good news to share, drop it in the chat. We'll get to it. Here we go. Shout out to our friends at Wilson County Hyundai, wilsoncountyhyundai.com. Make them a part of your new car buying process. See them in Lebanon or online, wilsoncountyhyundai.com. Good news, good news, good news. If you have good news, you can share it in the chat. I'm going to say my good news is I think this first show went very well. I think Ryan is going to be a good asset to our draft season for our Titans conversation throughout the spring as we get into it. So we'll do another one on Tuesday with Ryan and I, and then Ryan will pop in from time to time throughout the month of March and leading up to the NFL draft. So excited about that. That's my good news. We pulled off a 3-person show and we're only an hour and 10 minutes live. Usually 3-people shows go closer to 90 minutes, which I don't think any of us have time for today. But so that's my good news. A good overall product here.
Good news for me, music. I'm looking at music because new music today. My girl Gracie Abrams just dropped a new song with Selena Gomez. So I have not listened to that yet. I actually just had it sent to me and I was informed that it came out. So excited to listen to that. But my favorite band, Camp, CAAMP, dropped an EP at midnight. I did listen to that one first thing in the morning. It is absolutely wonderful. And so the serotonin is boosting, and I'm going to be listening to my new music all weekend. It's a special feeling. You're listening to a song for the first time, and there is that, like, am I about to listen to my favorite song I've ever heard in my entire life? You never know. You never know. Yeah, and it usually 99.9% of the time is not, but maybe.
Maybe. Just maybe. Ryan, do you have any good news? I don't even know if we prepared you for this part of the show.
I can roll with it, though. I can roll with it. The good news is that everybody hated this mock today. I have several mock drafts now over the next couple months to hopefully make up for it. And I'll be down in Indianapolis next week, which I'm very excited for on a serious note, because I think this is my 6th combine, I think, but my first with A to Z Sports. So I'm excited to be down there and provide some hopefully great coverage for you all.
Yeah, we've got absolutely. Bobby's wife got a remote job, gonna get to watch the kids and work, which is very nice, convenient, good news for Bobby. Dimitri says new music from J. Cole and American Toff in the music thing. Disturbed's new single just came out and it rocks pretty hard. Let's see, we got good news. Just that it's Friday, just, with a weekend ahead, that's always something to look forward to. Matt's looking forward to the combine next week. Yeah, I see Scott is making White Sox comments that are not very nice for spring training.
I've got some more good news, Sam. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You and I both got texts from Xfinity saying there might be a internet outage.
And we made it through the show.
And then Evan Winter texted me and said his internet's out. So it is happening in Nashville, but you and I survived this show.
Big Ten Jeff going to AAA to get his international driving permit to drive in Germany in a month. Big Ten Jeff, that world traveler. He's always somewhere.
I had never thought about having to, like, AAA being an asset to go get an international driver's license. I never thought about that. That's never crossed my mind one time.
I didn't even know you had, like, I've been doing a little bit of international travel recently, and I underestimated all that you have to do to, like, actually travel internationally.
Yeah.
Like, I was in Canada 2 weeks ago. I showed up in Canada and then I got like $150 bill from Xfinity because they were like, you texted while you were abroad and didn't get the plan. And I'm like, I didn't know I had to do that at all. I thought I was, I thought we were good.
That's hilarious.
So,
yep, that works. That's how it goes. All right, guys, that is it for us on this Friday. Scott says, welcome to the family, Ryan. So, so we're going to have some good shows talking more draft as the Titans content just gets warmed up. So the next time you see Sam live, you'll be in Indianapolis. The next time you see Easton live, he will be in Indianapolis. Hopefully Easton gets down his snowboard trails in one piece when he's out there with his family on a trip. And so, Ryan, thanks a bunch for jumping in here. Good work today, and good luck to everybody having a great weekend. Hope you do have a safe, warm weekend as possible. And we'll catch you guys on a Monday morning. Appreciate it as always. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you guys on Monday morning. Thanks.